Dennis, what's up, brother? Good to have you on.
It's good to be on, Larry.
I haven't done one of these in a while where we've been so flooded lately with guests who want to come on the show. And I used to spotlight a man in the alliance, I would say at least every other Friday, sometimes every Friday, going back probably a year and a half ago. And we got so much good feedback on these podcasts because, like, so for instance, like I had one guy who emailed me and they're like, I really, really like the Friday shows with the Alliance guys because like I relate to them. It's like, don't get me wrong, I like hearing from Jocko and I like hearing from like Matthew McConaughey. He's like, but I can't relate to those dudes. But what I truly
Right.
relate to is these dudes like who are doing life in the Alliance because they're like the everyday father. But I'm glad to have you on, man. You're gonna share your story.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is it, it is, it's part of the DA, right? Part of the nature of it is that you can't help but get into a room with a bunch of guys and at some point you go, man, this guy is this is me but in Georgia or something, right? I mean, it's amazing you find that. And so that is the nature of I think it's the secret sauce in there, right? And to not dive in too deep here at the start, but that's the secret sauce. The DA is you find people just like you, but in a different state or sometimes in your own state.
Well, I think a lot of people, I totally agree with you, and I think a lot of people, a lot of men, we don't have those environments where these conversations are welcome. In outside everyday life, I've been saying this for years with people in the DEA, but I get bored with everyday talk now with guys who aren't of that mindset or don't do life with us. And what I mean by that is how's work, how's life, how's the family, how are the kids? Good, fine, busy, crazy. And then you talk about like the news or you talk about the sports or whatever else. It's always these very surface level things. And really we don't really get to know people on a deep level unless we share story, and everybody shares story. I heard a quote a long time ago, and that's tell me a fact and I'll believe you. I'm sorry, tell me a fact and I'll listen. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But if you tell me your story, I'll never forget you. And that's so true because this is how human beings learn is through story. But there's this level that we just, as men in the outside world, the everyday world, we don't quite break through those barriers. And quite frankly, I think it's unfortunate because every man's got a story. Every man's got adversity. Every man has a strength. And by having those conversations, you get to learn right from each other. And that's why I'm excited to share your story today. For you, what does life look like for you right now, present day?
Yeah. So present day, I'm married. I've been married for 23 years. My wife and I have been separated for the last two. So I don't know if we count those last two. So 21 plus two. And I have two sons. I have a 13 and a 16-year-old son. My 16-year-old son lives with me all the time. He's a junior in high school. Going through the typical 16-year-old stuff, right? In a lot of ways where he's
Yeah,
kind of finding
yeah.
himself, I mean, I laugh sometimes when I talk to friends of mine that have like younger kids, right? They always I don't know, I guess maybe I was the same. I probably was the same way. But I hear them say things, right? Like, well, no, in my house that doesn't happen. And I always go, yeah, okay. It doesn't happen now, right? Your
Right.
kids are your kids are 10 and 12. Just
Yeah.
wait. Just wait till you've got a grown adult. He's 6'1" and 170 pounds. And so,
Dang.
I mean, he's a grown adult 16-year-old, and it's different. It's just different, him and I have a 13-year-old who's not 6'1" and 170 pounds, thankfully, because two of them in one house would be really bad. Um so it's just different. So I always think, just wait. You'd be surprised at the things that come out when suddenly you have a 16-year-old that basically what looks like a grown man, but with the age and experience of only 16 years,
Yeah.
trying to figure everything out. So it's an interesting combo, and it's a neat time to be. And I don't know if you've said it, but it's the first time I've raised a 16-year-old kid, and so I'm learning. I'm trying to stay. I always like to tell people like I'm just trying to stay half a step ahead of him in everything. And so when he tells me something I'm always super curious, and I like to ask questions because I want to stay like half a step ahead of him so that I still feel like I can be dad and offer some sort of wisdom and advice into his life. At the same time, they learn so fast, and they're learning so much and whatnot, that it comes at you. I mean, you realize how you have to be an expert in so many things when you have 16 and 13-year-old sons. You're kind of all over the board, right? I'm learning about cars and working on cars and trying to figure out how to help them do math homework and teaching them how to clean their rooms. And I mean, you're kind of have to be a jack of all trades and hit all sorts of different stuff. So that's what my house really looks like, is dad trying to stay half a step ahead of his kids and love what they love and learn what they learn, and at the same time try to, I always feel like I don't want to release two terrible adult men into the world when they get to the age where they want to leave. I want to be able to release two adult men who have learned what it's like to be social and to be able to love and to be able to have a confidence in themselves into the world, so that I'm not putting them in a position to fail right off the bat, basically.
Yeah, I appreciate the half a step ahead, and yeah, I say this quote a lot, like, so for instance, my gosh, let me do some math here real quick. So I have a 16-year-old and like 345 days ish right now. So he'll be 17 at the end of March. So I'm just kind of doing some quick math. And I say to him sometimes too, like I'm very open with like the missteps and the mistakes. And like, I serve up myself a nice warm piece of humble pie quite a bit, right? And I tell my oldest son that sometimes, or I tell, I'm like, hey, today I'm raising a 16-year-old in 345 days, right? And this is my first day doing that. And tomorrow will be 16 and 346 days. And it's all new. It's also new. Trying to stay that half a step in front of them. What I've noticed is, and now I've been, better at it with the three that are in the train behind him, but
Yep.
what I can tell you is that, and I know you have experienced this as well. I go to bed one night, I wake up the next, and or at least that's the feeling of it, and I'm like, oh my God, that chapter's closed.
Right.
I
Yeah.
had no idea we were that close, right? And like my 15-year-old, I'll never forget when he started, like, spending the night at his friend's house, like, like once a week, or like
Mm-hmm.
suddenly like he's choosing like, hey, can I go to Bella's house for dinner and not at our house for dinner tonight? We always have like Sunday dinners, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, dang, we're there. Holy crap. I didn't know we were quite that close. But
Yeah. Yeah.
let's speak to the men that don't have 16-year-old boys or kids, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
speak to you maybe 5 to 10 years ago. So I want you to rewind the tape, but I want you to stay present right now. But I want you to rewind the tape, and I want you to think about yourself. Let's just take 7 years ago. Okay, your 16-year-old was 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
13-year-old was, if I'm doing math right, is that 6, right?
6. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. You
okay.
got it.
Doing some quick
6 and
math.
9.
So I want you to have a conversation of advisement with yourself. You have this opportunity to be like, all right, Dennis, I'm gonna sit you down, bro. And over the next 7 years, these are some things that are going to emerge, and you got to be ready for them. And this is what I'm going to tell you to be ready for and what to do. And I know I'm really putting you on the spot on this one, but
No, it's good.
what are some things that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, what you just said is it goes fast. It seems like when they're 6 and 9, oh, I've got a long time before
Yeah.
they're 16 and 13, right? And you don't at all. And so time goes really fast, and anything that you want to accomplish, begin now. There is no, boy, I want to get to this, because you just never do. And even when you do, you do because, hey, I need to get to it now or I'm going to miss it. You feel like you're rushed, right? Everything feels like it's rushed. So, playing ahead of the game, I think, is the most important thing. Is instead of reacting to everything and constantly in full scramble mode. I remember when they were younger, it always felt like everything was reactionary. Oh man, I don't know what I'm doing here, and so I'm sort of reacting to whatever's coming at me. And being intentional and playing in a response to them, and being able to plan ahead and say, okay, this is what I want to be able to accomplish at this stage in their life. And then looking at even the next stage and going, okay, I don't know when this is going to come, but I want to have them prepared for this whenever it happens, and being able to do that, to me, maybe the most important thing that I could have done with my sons, that I wish I had done, was not missed some of those opportunities to prepare them for the next stage in life, and and prepare myself for the next stage that they're going to be going into. It just sort of happened, like you said, and then you look back and you realize, man, I really wish I could have done more there. I wish I could have been a part of more of that, because you didn't know it was going to end, and then suddenly it did, and you're there. So, being intentional and really enjoying that time. The other thing that I think I would say to myself is that, um, you know, punishment, right? So when kids did something wrong, I know that there's always this want to direct behavior and really try to get them to move the direction that you want them to go. And it was always this almost fear-based response to my kids. Whenever something would happen, I was always in this full-blown panic of, holy crap, if they do this, then they're going to end up growing up and robbing banks and killing people, right? They're not. He's 9 years old. This is not a life scarring event when he breaks something or spills something or, steals something, or whatever. It's not. It's a moment where you can really dig into with him the whys and the thoughts that went through his head and the feelings that he had around that, because there's something inside of those, for me, my sons, but inside of those kids that really, those things come from somewhere. Those reactions and those responses and those things that they do or that happens, they come from somewhere. And so understanding and really asking questions and being with them through those moments, instead of taking all their stuff or grounding them to their room or whatever. I mean, that was the learned behavior that I had from when I was a kid. Was, you do something wrong and you get grounded, or you get your stuff taken away, or you get yelled at, right? Now when I sit down with my son, who does something, and I say, hey, what was going through your head when you did that? I can learn so much and I can understand so much. And not only that, but I can also help him, because I don't think they think about that. I know they don't. These kids, they don't, as kids, they don't think, I don't know what was actually going through my head. So we've had many conversations where, my sons, when I've asked that question, like, hey, when you went and did that, what went through your head at that time?
Yeah.
That's the first time they've thought about that.
Yeah.
They don't, boy, I don't know what did go through my head. And as they process that, I've noticed that then the next time a situation comes up, they even pause and go, okay, wait a second, I've been here before. Even though I've never been here before, I have been here before.
Yeah.
And I know how this ends up. So that would be another big one for me, is to, just be curious and ask questions and allow them to process through it, instead of immediately correcting. Live through that with them a little bit. And there's a lot that you can learn, and there's a lot that they learn too.
Some things are really just coming to mind, even for my own childhood. And it sounds like yours was probably pretty similar. You do wrong, you just get like a verbal beatdown, right? And you get
Correct.
punished and, you get disciplined and all that. But even as you said that about having these conversations with your boys, right? Or with your kids, and hey, let's sit down and let's do an after action review. Let's debrief the situation. I think what happens is, number one, they go into learning mode. They go into
Right.
reflection mode, right? And here's the cool thing. You don't have to necessarily be the disciplinarian. You can be the guide, right? The compass of
Right.
life for these boys. Now, I want to make one thing really clear here. Being the guide and helping somebody with their own internal compass, that's not the absence of discipline, and it's not the absence
Right.
of even consequences, right? Because there's always natural consequences to situations.
Right.
But us being the guide, maybe the trusted guide, the one that when things go wrong, like, listen, man, we're gonna have a conversation about it, right? We're gonna understand what was at play here. I always like to also just unpack what we call the three whys, right? Because their surface level why might not even be the why that they did whatever they did. And it's getting to that, okay, well, tell me more about that. You know, what was going through your mind at that point? Well, it was because of this. Okay, well, if it was because of that, tell me at a deeper level what, and you don't talk to them that way, but you really unpack what was going on. Like, so for instance, I'll share this quick story with you. My 15-year-old, when he was 11, or I think he was 12, if you would have told me that my son would be caught shoplifting, I would have told you were crazy. I was like, that he would never do something like that. Like, he's so straight and narrow and so freaking disciplined. Like, when it comes to his training and his fitness and his mindset, wants nothing to do with drugs, wants nothing to do with alcohol. He has ended friendships over that stuff. And when he was 12, he got caught shoplifting, and I was floored. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, and here's what it boiled down to. You know, every part of me just wanted to just give him an absolute beatdown. And I kind of did, not physically, but like verbally. And like, I took like my first line of my first course correction was like taking everything away from him for 60 days. No friends, no phone, no electronics. I was like, you're going to stare at the wall for 60 days. And then I kind of stepped back from that and I was like, wait a second, hang on. This is not like him. What was going on? And of course, when I asked him, like, hey, man, what was going on for you? Like, why did you do this? And of course, was like, I don't know. And then I
Right.
started asking him questions like, well, was it peer pressure? Was it this? Was it that? And basically, through conversation, this is what actually came out. And it actually became a defining moment in our relationship with him and a defining learning moment for me as a father. So I always viewed my son as like, you know, he's been playing football, he was a wrestler, you know, he's like athlete, never has had one problem in school, has never gotten in trouble one time, makes good grades, you know, but a tough, stoic, stubborn, competitive kid. And I view him as like, oh, he's good looking, he's got friends, he's got this, he's got that, girls like him. Like, I always joke with him. I was like, you were the kid I hated in school growing up because like you had it all,
Right.
right?
Got it all.
But that was the lens that I viewed him through. So I couldn't understand, like, why would you do this thing? And it wasn't, it was by talking to him, right? And I was like, dude, you have all these friends. And he's like, I'll never forget him looking at me. He's like, but dad, do I? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh, your football buddies. Like, you've been playing football on the same team for 4 years. And he's like, dad, do you ever see me hanging out with anybody on the football team outside of football? And he's like, good player, right? He plays offense and defense. And I'm like, I started thinking, I was like, actually, no, I don't. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't, you know, I don't have friends on I have acquaintances on the football team and they're all tight, you know, they all have their cliques. And I'm like, wow, I didn't see that one. And then it all came about through conversation. I think for him, it even became obvious to him why he did it. So he had this one summer, he had like 6 friends come and go. 3 of them moved. And then the other 3, he ended friendships because of bad elements they were getting into. So there was
Right.
like a time where he was like super lonely. And this kid that he shoplifted with was brand new. Like, they were only friends for a couple weeks. And finally I was like, you know, why did you do it? And he was like, well, so and so told me to do it. And he's like, normally I'd say no. He's like, but looking back, I was afraid that if I'd said no, I was going to lose somebody else. And all of a sudden it was like, boom, like right in my face. I was like, oh my God. So this didn't come from like ill intentions of like, I'm going to go shoplift something because it's freaking cool. It came from a place of like, I'm going to lose somebody else in my life if I don't do
Right.
this. And it was by guiding him through conversation and not blasting him with like a disciplinary action, which he still had disciplinary action, but instead of taking things away, I added things to it. So like he had, you know, I was like, okay, look, man, I'm not going to take a lot of these things away, but you are going to live a highly structured life for the next 60 days. And I implemented like, you're going to be up at 8 a.m. every day. You're going to eat breakfast. You're going to journal. You're going to do chores from 9 to 12. Once chores are complete, then you're going to go out. You'll be able to hang out with friends. You're home by 5. You have dinner with us every night. No excuses. After dinner, if you got football practice, that's where you're going. If you're free and there's nothing else for us to do, you can go out with your friends till 8. And that was his life for 60 straight days. And then I ended that entire journey with taking him to the police station and sitting down, the three, me, him, and a cop. And I downloaded the entire experience, and the cop downloaded what could happen to him in the future if he ever did this. And he hasn't done anything since then. But, there were definitely consequences, but it was different than the takeaway. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And, funny enough, quick with my son, my 16-year-old, about a year ago before he got his license. So he's going to be 17 in June. So our kids are real close to the same age. He's going to be 17. So right around June of last year, right before he got his driver's license, he got himself in trouble. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was doing something dumb, right? Just something dumb that he shouldn't be doing. And he got in trouble, and we were talking again, same thing, asking questions, trying to figure it out. And at the end of it, we hadn't talked about any sort of discipline. No, I hadn't taken anything away at this point. We were just discussing it all. And I said to him, so what do you think the punishment for this should be?
I love that question.
And he said, and the amazing thing was this, it was that he said, maybe I should not be allowed to get my driver's license until I'm 18. And I was like, dude, that's 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a lot of me taking you places.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't laugh, obviously, but I said, I don't that. So that said a lot to me. One, he knew that, hey, this is serious business, and I can't be doing this, right? He knew the seriousness of what he had done. And he knew that hey, he was going to get in some sort of trouble, right? So, but the fact that he thought that 2 years of not getting his driver's license was a fitting punishment for what he did, and it ended up being no, how about you like you said, how about you have to come home early for a month, or you have to this and that. So we did, we had him write a paper, I think, where he had to explain the how doing what he did doesn't match up with what he wants, goals for his life, and how he wants to see himself in 5 years, kind of thing. And so that was the direction we went. But it kind of opened my eyes, and and again, taking this tactic, like you said, it doesn't eliminate any discipline from happening,
Right.
but it allows them to have this ability to kind of understand and realize, oh man, this is a big deal, like such a big deal that maybe I shouldn't even get my driver's license for, like you said, in his mind, 2 years, which was extraordinary amount. But and it also let him understand, like, hey, dad's in your corner. Like, I don't want you, I don't want you to get in trouble. I don't want you to sit at home. I don't want you to not have your driver's license. I don't want you to not have freedom. I don't want you to not have your stuff, right? I want you to have your stuff. Like you said, I don't want to drive you around, and and I want you to be able to grow up and be a happy kid. But there's times when you have to learn from the mistakes that you make too, because in the end there are consequences to all of our actions. Anytime that we make any action, there's a consequence to it. Some of them are good and some of them are bad, right? So we have to kind of learn from that.
That is such a good point. I think for the audience, and even as you said that, it reminded me in a powerful way as well that, just checking in with the kids. What do you think the consequence should be? What do you think the reasonable punishment should be if we're going to do that, right? And maybe we implement a punishment, or maybe we don't, right? I don't know. There's, like I said, there's always natural consequences. But I think that's a really powerful, reflective moment for your kid, instead of being lectured. And because they really truly tune us out after 10, 15 seconds anyway. But a true reflection of, like, how serious do you think this was? And to allow them, like, because there's a really powerful thing that happens. Like, I remember growing up, my mom did that with me a few times, but not a whole lot. But in the times that she did, I was like, yeah, that was bad. And it's not necessarily you telling me it was bad. It's me thinking, like, wow, that really wasn't. And that's way more powerful for someone to self-reflect versus you tell them, like, how horrible it really was, right? People's words that roll off their mind and heart, once prompted with a powerful question like that, are going to be more impactful than the words that we use on top of them, right? but I
Yeah,
like
and
that a lot.
change comes from internal, right, and not external. So you can punish somebody, and that's external. And so you may get a minor behavioral change, right? If you punish somebody, and they might go, okay, I don't want to get punished again. So they're making the choice to not do it based on the want to not get punished again.
Right.
Versus if they had said self-reflection and he realizes, man, that was kind of dangerous. I can see the downside to that. I really don't want to do it. That is internal change. And so now he's making decisions based on internally understanding the consequences to his actions versus the fear of punishment. At some point, the fear of punishment is no longer going to cause him to make a difference in the way that he makes decisions, but an internal change where he is making decisions based on how he wants to see his life 5 years from now, or his internal value system that he has developed in himself. Those changes, those decisions, those can influence decisions that we don't even know about as they kind of move down the road. And for a parent, I mean, that's the ultimate goal for me, right? Is that he's making decisions that both of my kids are making decisions based on an internal moral system and value system that is beneficial to them and not hurtful to them as they move through life.
Yeah, because that's part of raising a full functional asset to society versus the
Right.
other way. And you hit upon that before earlier on in the interview, is that like, hey, how do I make these young men, full functional, good, basically good human beings?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I don't need, there's enough people that I run into on a daily basis where I think, boy, what did your parents do to you? I don't want my kids to be those two more of them out in the world. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point, man. I want to segue a little bit into what was life like for you outside the alliance. And the reason I'm asking this question, you and I were jamming on this earlier, and I want to be very, very clear with why I'm asking these questions.
Mm-hmm.
And gentlemen, for you in the audience, I'm not asking Dennis these questions because I'm promoting the alliance. There's a reason, and Dennis and I were talking about this. So the conversations and the things that we do in the alliance are very different conversations than we have in the outside world. So we have, how's life? Men talk, right? How's life? How's the family? How's the wife? How's work? Good, fine, busy. Kids are doing this and that. Sports, what the Patriots are doing, what the NBA is doing, whatever else, right? March Madness. It's these surface level conversations that really don't move the needle in any of our lives, right? They're good for like
Right.
surface level stuff, but that's about it. It's when we truly get in community of like-minded, iron sharpens iron. I don't care where you get it from, whether it's our program, whether it's the Bible study in your church, whether it's, you have a group of, fitness individuals that you have these conversations with at your CrossFit gym, whatever. But the conversations are different, right? And the strategies and the learnings are different. And the way we implement and the way we evolve, and quite frankly, how we live life becomes very different. And guys outside of tribes like the Alliance, or like I said, or any other place you go, life is different. And I want you to explain, what was life like for you before you joined?
Right. I think back to, I said that my wife and I have been separated for 2 years, and I think back to that moment that happened, and the thought that went through my mind was basically like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Right? How after 20 years, 21 years of being married, how as a person did I arrive here? And it's funny because it was kind of like it really was like a movie, and it seems weird, but it really was, where like time stopped and then it went, let's take a look. And in my mind, I just rewound and basically, went through years and years and years of life, obviously as you're contemplating, how in the heck did I get here? And I really realized that I just had no idea what I was doing. I was making everything up as I was going along. I had very little influence around me to provide me any feedback of good or bad of anything that was going on. I didn't know. I didn't have best practices community around me. I mean, anything basically that you would in a situation, if you think about it from like a professional situation, you would never go into the most important presentation of your career without any sort of help or resources or knowledge or experience. But yet here I was in my marriage and my raising my kids, doing exactly that, just kind of winging it, taking what I learned from two flawed people, my parents, and it's not a a shot at them. It's we're all flawed people, and so I took what I learned from them and I was just sort of applying it haphazardly to my life. And that's what my life was. And that was literally what it was. I was basically making it up as I was going along. And every once in a while I would stop and go, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. And I would try to find some resource to help me. And sometimes I'd find a good one. Sometimes, I would realize that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, and I would move on, and I would go on to the next thing. And that's where I found myself. Like I said, I was sitting in my rental house with a cardboard box with my laptop on it, sitting on a pillow, and trying to look professional on Zoom as I was trying to work, thinking like, holy, what the heck, and I realized that I was making it up as I was going along all of those years, and that was a bone jarring experience that really, you know, looking back through life and realizing, holy crap, you've been winging this for, for 44 years, at that time, you've been winging this for 44 years. Uh, Not good, right? I mean, it really make you stop. And so that was my life before the DA, was just sort of making it up as I go along, and trying to figure things out as they came at me.
You and me both. And I think that's the common thread with every guy. And when I look at every single man out there, usually that's the lens I see him through. I was like, man, that guy's probably just doing the best he can with what he's got, which probably, quite frankly, isn't a whole lot of support. It's probably it's not a community, and he's just trying to figure it out. But here's what I'll tell you, and I know for you is the same. The intention and the desire is there. It's like deep
Right.
down, man, there's this inner lion, right? That's just like, I just want to do this right. I want to do this the best way I can. And I want to do it like with everything that I have, but I don't know exactly what it looks like. But I think the thing that keeps that lion in the cage is the ego. Because man,
Right.
I
Yeah.
was there, and I'm guessing you were probably there. I'll never forget. This was probably 10 years ago. Like I thought when my wife and I started going to a marriage counselor, because our marriage was not the best for probably the first, 8 years we were married. And I thought to myself, how weak am I? I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
want to say the words out loud, marriage therapy. Like, how weak am I? Like, how broken am I? How broken are we? Like, that we need help. Like, man, it was almost like it was a bigger red flag, because it was almost like the spotlight was on us of like, you are not working and you are not meant to be. And this is going to end up in disaster. It's like all these BS stories I was telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the funny thing. We look at something like DEA, some guys, not a lot, but like some guys look at some, like, if I need help from a community of brothers, well, then I'm broken. If I need a marriage therapist, well, then I'm broken, right? Or um if I need counseling just for myself, not even for my marriage, well, then I'm broken. But here's the crazy thing. We'll sign up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tomorrow,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And we look at that through the lens of like, oh man, I don't know how to defend myself. I don't know about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's awesome. I'm gonna go learn Brazilian. It's so cool because I'm so courageous, because I'm gonna go learn and I'm gonna get these skills, and you get all jacked up and excited by it, and you go out and you sign up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what people miss is that it is the same thing. It's the
Mm-hmm.
exact same thing, that you could go out and wing, right, martial arts, right? But
Sure.
then you go step into the cage, you'd be like, all right, man, you've winged it. Maybe you read a book, maybe watch some YouTube videos, maybe from an instinct perspective, you might know how to defend yourself a little bit. And then you get up against a guy who's been in the gym and training for 3 months or a year or whatever. You are going to get pummeled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pummeled. I had this conversation with Frankie Edgar, who's a UFC
Yeah.
legend. And I was like, it's so funny, man. Is like, if you and I were to get in the ring right now, because he's 145 pounds and I'm 170, he would run through me in like probably 9 seconds. Right. And everybody
Right.
around me would be like, well, dude, what'd you expect? Like you didn't train, you didn't go learn anything. Like, what did you were winging it. Why did you expect for it to end up any other way? And I started looking at it like, just like, well, what about marriage?
Right.
What about parenting? What about mindset? Same thing can be said for personal trainers. It's like, man, if you need a marriage therapist, oh, you're broken. You have a personal trainer. Oh my gosh, you have made it. Lap of luxury right there, dude. That's amazing. You have your own personal trainer, but it's just the lens that we view it through. But I'm curious for you, when you did this
Mhm.
thing where you kind of looked at your life of like, why did this happen? How did this happen? How did you check that ego at the door and be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn.
Yeah, that I mean, it was really the I mean, you know, the reality is this is I know my wife, I basically it boiled down to this. If that woman who I know and love and I think the world of no longer even wants to be around me, like how badly do I need help? Right? At what point do I have to check my ego and realize I'm not what I thought I was. I am not who I thought I was. I am not able to do this on my own. So I have two choices. Either I write her off or I write that old me off. One of the two has to be wrong in this situation. And knowing my wife, I was not going to write her off because I know that she's probably right. In a lot of ways, she's right. And so, that was the choice that was before me is who's is what she's saying correct or is what I think correct? And so that was the choice that I just made is who do I want to be? I had to sit down and ask myself the same question that I asked my 16-year-old a year ago was, so who do you want to be when you're 5 years from now? And what kind of man do you want to be? And what does that look like? And how do you get there? And so, that started me down a journey basically of, okay, then let's tear this thing down and let's figure out where you went wrong, right? The same way you would do it if you fire up your car one morning and it doesn't run, right? I mean, do you just throw it away or do you stop and go, okay, somewhere along the line, something's wrong here, which doesn't mean it's trash, needs to get thrown away, but it needs to be fixed. So let's start digging in and seeing how we fix it. And so I just made the decision that I was going to start digging and see how I can fix it. And in that you have to lose your ego because it will stop you from going anywhere and from doing anything. When you basically admit I am I'm not where I want to be, I'm not who I want to be. And 5 years from now, when I look back, I'm not going to appreciate where I'm at if I don't do something different. Your ego has to go or you're not going to go anywhere, you're not going to move forward. And so I just dove into it. I just decided that, again, my sons are more important than me, my wife is more important than me, the people around me that I interact with on a daily basis, more important for them to see me in a light that's positive and that can be influential in their life than me to just feel like I'm doing it right. And so um, that was the decision I made and the direction I went, which led me to the DA, funny enough, along with a lot of other things. But um, it was just that decision of I'm just I need to look at every single aspect of my life and decide what the heck is going on. So, mentally, spiritually, physically, I just tore down everything in my life and said, okay, let's start from scratch. Let's examine everything that you thought that you knew. And some of the stuff I kept. Frankly, I'm not saying like I was a
Yeah.
total piece of crap and I'm a totally different person than I was because I'm not. Some of the things you go, okay, this I'm okay with. I got this. Um, but other things, man, I mean, I had to start over in a lot of different areas.
I think the reference of like the car, right? We look at preventative maintenance on our car, like, oh, well, we have to do that. Even our teeth, right? But
Right.
like it's you look at your entire vehicle. I have a 2016 Nissan Altima in my driveway, right? That was the car I used to drive, and now my 16-year-old drives it. It's got 81,000 miles on it, and I just took it into the shop, and I had to have about $1,400 worth of work done to it, right? And it was the same thing. The guy's like, "Hey, man, your tires are great. Like, we're good. We don't have to replace those. You probably just had those done. Brakes are looking good. he's like, transmission fluid looks pretty bad. We got to flush that out. You definitely need an oil change. You have a cracked, fog lamp. We should probably fix that. Certain things like that, where it's like, hey, let's assess where we're at. It's still a vehicle. It'll get you from A to B. It's still a great car. Let's just make sure we refine and polish and make sure it's completely and totally and safe and operational moving forward. Right. And,
Right.
I'm like, because my 16-year-old is going to drive it. I'm like, yeah, do whatever you have to do to make this car as safe as possible, that's going to function properly. Um, and I like to use that reference of preventative maintenance. What were some of the aha moments that you had early on when you started doing life with us? Just some of the things you started learning and then started implementing.
Intentionality. That's the biggest one. That was the thing that when I came into the DA that really attracted me to it. And I mean, at first I was just like, I'm going to try something because I'd gone through, this was after I'd gone through a year of pretty hardcore therapy with an individual therapist, breaking down my life mentally, where I was at. Spiritually, I'd been talking and hanging out, and again, just breaking things down with a pastor who has become my mentor and good friend. Um, and so, I'd done a lot of hardcore inner work, but then I thought, now how do I maintain this? Like, how do I keep this going? How do I take this internal change and figure out how to apply it in my everyday life? And the answer was, well, I need to find other people that are doing the same thing and that are walking the same road and that are wanting to live life in a way that is that's beneficial to my family and the people around me and everything. And so when I found the DA, I just thought, well, I'm just going to give it a shot and see. At this point, I need some sort of community around me, and this looks like a community around me. And so it really was just I'm just going to give it a try and see what happens. And honestly, if I were to be honest, in the back of my head, I probably thought, I'll do this for a few months, and and then if it doesn't work, I'll go find something else. Right? I wasn't super like committed to it from the beginning, but I got into the DA and the intentionality of it. Everything for a purpose. Let's try to take the things that we're doing and figure out how to do them as good as possible. So, I'm in a group that we started talking because we were keeping each other accountable for our workouts, right? It's a text group outside of, this is all these little communities that have formed. Started because I wanted to make sure that, hey, I'm working out all the time and I want to be able to be physically in as good a shape as I can be. And so it started out with some accountability from there. Now we're good friends. It's accountability for everything. We talk about every dang thing known to man, and that group is morphed into way more than that, right? But it's very intentional, the relationship building even that we've done. So just the intentionality of everything that's happened, it really drew me in and made me appreciate one, the fact that I could, I was walking with guys that had walked where I was before, right? So there's guys that are ahead of me that are here that I can learn from. There's guys that are in the same place that I'm at where we can kind of console each other and can kind of swap war stories and ride the ups and downs out. And there's guys that are starting down this journey that I can then impart some of what I've learned to their situations and let them know, hey, it's going to be okay. Right now it sucks and it feels, like the world is coming down around you, but you can do it. You can survive this because I have, and these guys have. And so let's figure out how to do it together and figure out what you need. So that intentionality has just been a massive part of where I'm starting to apply it. And so it's funny because one of the things that you said was that it starts to permeate through other conversations. I'm terrible at with friends of mine who don't want to really live life together. I've become the worst friend that they have. I guarantee it, because I don't, we get in conversations and they want to talk about, hey, let's talk about my job. No, how are you doing? So in your job, how are you doing? How are you feeling in that? And I get people that look at me and they're like, buddy, I don't want to go down this road. Like, I have no wish to talk about this stuff. And when that's the case, we really aren't that good of friends anymore. We have a little conversation now again. We might text back and forth, but I have guys that I've met in the DA that I've known for 6 months that are closer friends of mine than people that I've known for most of my life, because we just dig into every little thing, and these guys don't let me get away with, how are you doing? I'm doing good. No, really, how are you doing? I even had a hard time at the beginning of the conversation where
Sure.
you said, "Where are you at right now?" I was really thinking to myself, I don't want to talk about where I'm at right now. Let's dig into what I can do better and how I can improve. It's become a mindset that I have now, that's just sort of permeated most of the things around me, which is way different. But it's that intentionality. Like, let's do everything with a purpose, and the purpose is to do it as good as we possibly can. And if I'm not doing it very well, let's find somebody that can teach me, or let's find something out there that I can learn and get better at, and continue to improve and grow.
I think you just said what my point was earlier, which is you just get bored with everyday conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
once you start really being a part of the conversations that we have, the other conversations are like, this is like, I have two friends that from college that I see every few months. We go out and we grab dinner, and it has been the same conversation for 20 years. And literally, like, I just got a text message last night, and I'm just like, they're like, hey, it's been a few months to grab dinner. And I'm like, there's a part of me, I'm like, man, I've got 4 boys. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I don't want to waste 4 hours of my night talking about the same surface level crap and the same memories that we have talked about for 20 years since college. Like, I don't, it's not that I don't appreciate the friendships. I just would rather not spend my time in those conversations really anymore, because I don't walk away from those feeling better or doing better. And I don't feel like I contributed really anything. Right.
Right.
I want to walk away from those iron sharpen iron conversations. I'm not saying like every conversation we have has to be like this deep dive and whatever, but at the same time, like, you know, getting to just that slight deeper level, right? Where we walk away feeling like, yep, that was a fruitful conversation. I took some things and they took some things. And because of it, we're better, and
Right.
we're going to operate better. But yeah, the intentionality is a very big thing. And you know what? I want you to explain that a little more, because here's what I have found over the years. And I used to do this as well. So like, if a guy wants to come and join one of our programs, whether it's, Dad Edge Accelerator, which is for our business owners, I don't or Alliance, I'll ask guys, hey, what is it that's missing in your life? What do you want out of this? Right. And I've heard in the past, I want to be more intentional. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, I want to be more intentional with my time. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean for you? You want to be more intentional with your time? Like, what does more intentional look like? And they're like, well, I want to have, a better connection with my wife. I'm like, okay, what does a better connection with your wife look like? What does it look like right now? And they're like, well, it's okay right now, but I want it to be better. Well, what does better look like? Right. And so basically what I'm saying is most men, we think about more. I want more communication with my kids, more communication with my wife. I want better, I want to be more intentional. But really what it is it's an idea. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very cerebral idea, but we have no clue what it looks like. Now, if I ask you about something like finances or health, be like, hey man, where do you want to be? Like, I was a personal trainer 3 years in college. Where do you want to be? I want to go from 220 to 180. I want to go from
Right.
18% body fat to 9% body fat. That is what optimal health looks like for me. It is dialed in, and we know the target, right? Versus like, I just want to be healthier. And if I had a client that would tell me I just want to be healthier, I would always dial it in to be like, what does optimal health look like? Well, I just want to perform better. I want to feel better. No, 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 no. What do you want to do? And then you really get to the heart of it. It's like, man, I really want to get back into tennis. I've been playing tennis. The last time I played tennis, I was in college competitively, and I haven't played tennis in 15 years. And I want to be a part of a tennis league, and I'm 40 pounds overweight. And I want to be able to get back on the tennis court and play and have fun with it. And so I want to be 40 pounds lighter. I want to be more agile on my feet. I want more strength in my legs. I want to be quicker. I want to be faster. I want to be, get my serve down. Then you get really dialed into what healthier looks like. And so I really want to understand
Mm-hmm.
from your standpoint, before DEA, when you were like, I want to be more intentional, it's all about intention. How has that definition changed for you? Like, what are the actual specific tactics and the experiences that you had by learning how to be more intentional?
Right. So what I said, when I before the DA, right, when I was sort of just making it up as I was going along, right? I was winging it to the best of my ability. That's no longer where I'm at. It's no longer winging it. It's no longer doing it to the best of my ability. It is doing it to the best of how the ability of whoever I can find that's been there before me, that's been through this, that's been able to work through things, that has an idea that maybe I've never thought about before, that I've never put into practice in my life, that I can give it a shot to. It's it's no longer based, my life is no longer based solely on how well I can do things, but my life is based on how I can gather information and I can really put together a solid plan to be able to work through different areas of my life. And so it's gone from winging it to having a plan and having a goal that I want to get at. So much like you were talking about with working out, right? So if I want to go from 220 to 180, I need to have a plan. I need to know, okay, how do I get there? I watch my diet. I work out this amount of times. I eat this amount of calories. I burn this amount of calories. And then along the way, I have benchmarks where I'm measuring how I get there. And then I get to a point where I plateau a little bit and I've got to go to Larry and I've got to say, hey, I've plateaued. I don't know how to get through this. Hey, did you try this? Did you try that? Have you been here? Have you been there? And then you start to continue doing that with every single area of my life. So when I talk about, the way that I talk to my kids and engaging with my kids, that doesn't happen because I just did it one day and I went, oh wow, that works. Nope. I really said, hey, I want to be able to communicate with my kids better. So how do I do that? That's my goal. I want to be able to communicate on a deeper level with my kids. Not better. I want to communicate deeper. I want to know more about them. I want to understand who they are. I want to know what their goals and their passions and what they love is. So how do I do that? And then came up with a plan. Here's how you do that. You ask more questions. You be more, you be more inquisitive. You love the things that they love, right? My oldest son, I was telling you earlier that he used to wrestle, he quit wrestling, and now he loves cars. Well, I was not a car guy. Growing up, I couldn't afford cars, and so something in our family, it was just a way to. Does everybody fit in it? Yep. Okay, then it's good, right? So that was kind of the deal growing up. I didn't know anything about cars. My dad didn't work on cars. I never worked on cars. Suddenly, my son turns 16 and he realizes, oh my gosh, I really like cars. He likes to drive them, he likes to work on them, he likes to take them apart and put them back together. He speaks in a language that I've never spoken before, about gearboxes and ratios and this and that and the other thing. And so I had to find myself, part of my plan was loving the things that they love. And so when he said, boy, I really love cars, I had to go, oh crap, now what? Right? I could say to myself, well, I want to be better at understanding my kids. No, I need to be intentional, is the way I put it, to go and find out as much as I can about that, to look up these things, to talk to people. I found some friends that have that same passion and were mechanics, and started asking them questions and bouncing things off of them, and joining car groups so that I can see the conversation and all that kind of stuff, and taking my son to different things, these meetups that they do. And when I'm there, going around and asking questions and just soaking in and learning as much as I can, so that then when he says, boy, I really love this, he knows, boy, dad doesn't have any idea what he's doing, but he really is putting the time and effort in to try to understand it because I love it and I want to do it. And that is how I've increased and continue to increase my relationship with my son, and then benchmark along the way, right? So I look for times when I can measure off of the way that he responds to me or the way that he reacts to me, to know if what I'm doing is actually being successful or if I'm just doing things in order to do it, right? Because I don't, like you said, I have plenty that I could be doing. I don't want to waste time doing things just to do them. I want to do things that are actually moving me towards that goal of having a better relationship, a greater relationship, a deeper relationship with my sons. on a deeper level. So that's, to me, what intentionality is. And I've just applied that to every area of my life, in terms of areas that I wanted to, that I saw when I did self-reflection and realized, boy, I have a deficit in this area. I've done that. I did little things even, which, would seem silly, but for a while when I first decided I wanted to do this, I would go down to downtown Minneapolis, where I live here in Minnesota, and work giving food out to homeless people, right? And working with the people in a more, because I mean I have a pretty good, I make a good living. My sons and I, we've got pretty much everything we have, and so I just realized, like, man, we don't have in my home, we don't have like this an understanding of how some people don't have all of this, and we don't have that really that want to help other people that have it less than we do. And so we were every single Sunday we would go down and we would serve food, down in downtown Minneapolis. We did it for a whole summer, actually. So 3-4 months we did that every single Sunday, just to get them the experience. And it was funny because my sons and I and my family, you wouldn't catch us dead in the parts of Minneapolis that we were in. Before that, we would have never been comfortable going down there. It's rough neighborhoods, it's just not something. There's nothing there, so you wouldn't go there on a regular basis. But now my boys can go down to downtown Minneapolis and they're comfortable. They are waving, talking to people. I was just reminiscing, last winter we were down at the high school wrestling tournament, my sons and I, and we were walking down the street, and there was a homeless guy on the street, and we walked up to the street to cross over, and so everybody's in big groups because it's the wrestling tournament, so there's big groups of fans there. And I had my youngest son right next to me, and I looked over, and my oldest son was not next to me anymore. And I'm thinking, you have that immediate panic of, oh crap, where's my kid? We're in this big group. And so I turn around and I'm searching for him, and I look back, and he's got his wallet out of his pocket, his 15-year-old wallet, and he's pulling like $4 or whatever he had on him out of his wallet and giving it to this homeless guy that's sitting, off to the side. And there's a group of probably 30 people there, and here's a 15-year-old kid pulling out his only $4 that he had and giving them to this guy, and I'm it's making me emotional now just telling the story. But I just thought to myself, like, holy crap, what a good kid. The fact that he's okay going up to this person and even interacting with them, let alone thought to himself, well, I want to help this guy out, and do what I can, and was willing to do that. I mean, it shows. That's one of those benchmarks where when you see that, you go, okay, we're moving the bar, we're moving the needle a little bit at a time, and a little bit, and we're creating a difference in our world. And you get there by having a plan, right? And then going out and finding ways to improve, and to work through the things that you don't understand, and then finding people around you who you can bring into your community of guys that you can bounce things off of. And as guys, we just don't have that. We just don't, for whatever reason. I don't know why it is, but our society has just lost that, sitting around the campfire and telling stories, and bouncing things off of people. I mean, we don't have that as guys, and it's sad, and it really is. It's something that is lacking, and I think that you see it, frankly, in our society. You see the result of that, and that's a whole lot of guys living the way I was, which is making it up as you go along and afraid to have conversations. Now I really feel like at any point I will ask some very awkward questions to guys where they're like, hey, I don't know. You could tell they're not comfortable having those kind of conversations, but I want the info. You have information that I want, that I need to continue on and make my life better. So I'm just going to ask you. And it's funny how many times those guys are so awkward about answering those questions, and it's sad, really. I mean, it's not something that I feel like we should be okay with that. That guys should be okay having that community with other guys, and being able to do that. And without that, I mean, trying to be successful without that is, I mean, you're basically leaving it to chance. And
Yeah.
this is your most important relationships in your life, your marriage and your kids. Why would you leave that to chance? There's not too, just doesn't make any sense as to why we would do that.
Yeah, because we don't leave the other things to chance, right? So
Right.
if you're a BJJ guy, right, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, you go learn. You don't leave it to chance that you'll figure it out or you'll wing it, especially when you get attacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing to be said for going to the dentist. You go do it. The same thing is for anything. You mentioned in there it's getting ready for the biggest presentation of your career, and we
Right.
wouldn't wing that, right? I remember when I was working for corporate America and I would have interviews with companies, right, as a candidate to go get a job, either in sales or management or whatever. I would do so much prep work. I would like literally create a binder about that company that I was about ready to interview for, to show that I had done a lot of due diligence on the product, on the history, on the culture, everything. I was ready with questions I was going to ask the interviewing manager, things like that. And I was on the other side of the table for years where I was interviewing other people. And what's really, really interesting, there was a few interviews that I ended 10 minutes into the interview because I could tell the person was just totally winging it and they were just full of it and be like, hey,
Right.
let's protect each other's time here and let's move on, because I can tell like this, you haven't given this much thought and you don't even really know all the products that will be in your bag and that kind of thing. Yeah, as we wrap up here, I want you to give advice for men who, they don't have this, or that they think that they have this, or even going back to maybe you 5 years ago. If you have the opportunity to step into something like this, I want you to share, you know, why this is important and why people just shouldn't, quite frankly, wait. And I would even argue to say, I actually love it when the guys who already have decent lives, decent marriages, and decent relationships with their kids. And I say decent, meaning like, it's not like great, but the house is not on fire. It's sort of right in this space where it's okay, right? But we don't feel the urgency to do anything when things are okay. We
Right.
want to, we feel the urge to take action when there's a crisis. I mean, look how many people, like, they don't start taking care of their health until after they have an open heart surgery, and they're like, oh, I guess I better start eating right. I should probably start
Right.
exercising now, right? Versus doing all the preventative care, when things are good, how to keep them either moving in that direction, good, which I don't even like saying that, because you'll elevate it. You'll get to a whole
Right.
different level versus good.
Yeah. I think that the health analogy is the perfect one, right? Is you don't you don't want to wait till you get to the doctor and you're in so much pain that the doctor sits you down and they say, hey, here's the deal. You have a terminal illness, and there's not a whole lot we can do for it. If we would have caught it, 6 months ago, we probably could have worked on this. But now, I'm sorry, we're beyond that point. You don't know the things a lot of times that are below the surface, and that was in my marriage. I just didn't know. I just had no idea the things that were below the surface. And funny enough, even when my wife was trying to tell me that, right, hey, this is happening, this is going on. I don't like this, and I still just had no idea how bad it was, how tough it was for her to be married to me. I didn't know. And so, waiting until it gets to that point, waiting until your kids look at you and say, boy, I don't like you, right? I mean, you don't want to be in that position. You just don't. And so I think that all of us can probably learn and grow and from where we are. And I think being honest and putting the ego aside and doing that is really the only way to do it. If you don't have that community around you, right? You don't have people around you that can say, hey, time out here. If you thought about this, if you really considered that, even just hearing their stories, you said it earlier, right? And I think John Eldridge said, he's an author, and he says, you don't really know a man until you've heard his story, right? Is one of the things that he says. And I think that just hearing other people's stories, I would even say I would add on to what he says, and that is that you don't know yourself until you hear other people's stories, because you hear other people's stories and you go, man, that was me. that sounds like me. Now, wait, what happened? Down the road, what happened with you? Oh, okay. So now I know what my future is. But when it's you and you're living in the present, you really have no idea what's coming down the road. You start to hear those other guys' stories, and you really can put yourself in that position and go, okay, now I know what's coming down the road. Now what the heck do I do to change the trajectory of that? Where's the direction I need to go to change that? And so, the advice to guys is that one, you don't know what you don't know, frankly.
Yeah.
And the idea of trying to figure it all out on your own, it's just silly. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to do it. You don't have to. You don't have to figure it out on your own. They there We go into this life and we go into marriage and having kids without an instruction manual. But we do have teachers and we do have guides. And I think that one of the things that I've learned from talking to guys who have been that are further along in the journey for me is that they want to be able to impart that knowledge, but nobody asks them.
Yeah.
They feel like they have nothing to give because nobody's asking them. They have a whole lot of knowledge that they want to give,
Yeah.
and we're all stuck in this silo of not asking the ones in front of us and then not imparting anything to the ones behind us. And so everyone's making it up as they go along. Well, that's a losing philosophy in any other arena. What makes us think that it's going to be a winning philosophy in our marriage and with our kids? It just doesn't make any sense. And so, not to say that you're going to find the exact situation that you're in, but you can learn from all of those stories and find the ones where there's bits and pieces of it where you can go, okay, I can apply that. I can use that. I can do this. And then when you can't figure it out, to have a place where you can just in an open forum go, hey guys, here's where I'm at, and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. There's always somebody that's going to go, I don't know either, but let's walk through this together. And now you've got two of you doing it, and then two of you will grab three or four, and next thing you know, you've got a whole group, right? And now you're locking arms with the group of people to help you try to figure it out. That becomes very powerful in a hurry, and it really does something, and it really changes the whole dynamic of what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, and it gives you confidence. For one, I don't know everything. I don't know how to really do a lot of this stuff, but I'm confident that I know somebody that does, and I can go figure it out, and I can work through it, and I can get advice that will allow me to figure out situations no matter what it is. So I walk through a lot of instances now with a whole lot of confidence that I never had before. Um, so that I think would be the parting advice if I could give anybody to anything.
I walk into instances and situations where I have a whole lot more confidence than I did before. I think that's a beautiful quote. One thing that I want to make sure that the audience really captures, because I want to put a couple pieces together here. One of our coaches in our accelerator mastermind is that's our business owner. Like I said, business owner mastermind, but it's Jake Herbert. Now all you have to do is Google Jake Herbert. Jake Herbert is an American Olympic wrestling legend, 9-time national champion, silver medalist in 2012. Literally has thousands of matches under his belt. I think all through college he went undefeated in college at Northwestern. Like, was pretty much American's golden boy when it came to American or Olympic wrestling. And I just flew Jake in for our wrestling program. He ran a wrestling clinic for all of our kids on the wrestling team. And he said something that I've heard Jake say before. One of the kids was like, what advice would you give me to be a better wrestler? And Jake is like, I'll give you advice on not only how to be a better wrestler, but how to be better at everything in life, everything. Because I had a coach at 10 years old tell me this, and I never forgot it. And I always made sure that I had these three types of people in my life. This coach told me, when it comes to your life and anything successful that you do, anything, I don't care what it is, right? Business, wrestling, school, marriage, girlfriends, kids, faith, the whole 9 yards, everything. You have to have three types of people in your life. Number one, somebody who's ahead of you, somebody who is your mentor, somebody who's coaching you, right? That's one. The second one is your equal. the one who's going through it with you, right? The one who's locked arms with you. That could be one of your teammates. It could be one of your friends. It could be, a dude at your church or whatever, right? But someone who is your equal that you can spar with, right? That you can practice these things with, talk about these things with. And he's like, and most important, believe it or not, and here's the funny thing. We don't expect here in this last one, you're teaching somebody else who's behind you.
Right.
And you could see the kids like, what? Like, aren't I one learning? And Jake, he's like, I see every one of you questioning what I just said. He goes, here's why you do this. When you're teaching, you're mastering what you've learned. It's
Right.
not necessarily the learning that you master. It's when you teach it and give it to somebody else. That's when you master it. I say this on kickoff calls in the Alliance a lot because I always say, gentlemen, do not be surprised to see your strengths emerge like that. And what I mean by that is you think you're coming here because you need to learn about marriage or patience or mindset or health or all these different things, right? You're so focused on your opportunities for growth, you have no idea what your strengths are. Once you're in the mastermind sessions and you're conversating with these men, suddenly you're like, wow, you know what? I actually came here to be more patient with my kids, but I've got a really fantastic line of communication with my wife. So-and-so is talking about how he's struggling with that. I know exactly where he's at. I know exactly what to tell him to do. Right. Or it's like, or vice versa. Like I might have great patience with I might have a decent marriage, but my kids drive me absolutely crazy. I cannot be calm with them. Like I just fly off the handle. Well, guess what? I'm like, hey man, I'm actually pretty patient with my kids. They drive me crazy, but I'm able to stay calm. Here's how I do it. So I always tell men, I was like, your strengths are going to be very obvious very quick because as soon as a guy opens up his mouth and he starts talking about some of the things he needs, it's going to cue, it's going to click. And you're going to be like, wow, I'm actually pretty good at that. Let me share with this guy. So it's not only a community of people who consume, it's a community of contributors as well. But if anything, have those people in your life, someone who's teaching you, someone who's your equal. Do not, under any circumstances, forget about the person that you're contributing to, that you're teaching, because two great things happen. You pass on that knowledge to someone who desperately needs it. And when you're teaching it, you're constantly reminding and reflecting and sharpening the saw in your own life on those lessons too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. And thanks for sharing your story. Like you said, I actually jotted down that quote from Eldridge, which is, you don't really know a man until you hear his story, which is our opening quote and for this whole show. But I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, not a problem, man. It's been good being on. Good talking to you.
Yeah, back at you, gentlemen. If this was helpful for you, we'll have a link for Dennis's social in the social media, not a social security number. We'll have it in there if you want to reach out to him and just ping him and just say thanks for some of the wisdom bombs that he dropped on you guys. Also for Dad Edge Alliance, we'll have a link for that in the show notes as well. All you have to do is head on over to thedadedge.com/Friday 97 for the show. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday 97. Dennis, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.